Welcome, I'm Russ Kane. This is the Daily Show exclusive to Men's Radio Station. I've changed the background because I think the darkness reflects where the hell we are in this insane world. I haven't spoken about what's going on. I just couldn't even bring myself to do it because I can't find the right words to express my anger, my disgust at the barbaric death cult that we've witnessed. It is a dark period in our history. It's a dark period in the world. Now, we're here always, and we have been, women's radio since January 2018, men's radio stations since January 2019. Excuse me. And it's all about mental health and well-being. I'm going to be very honest with you. It may not be professional, but I've always been honest in my broadcasting, is that what is going on now has seriously hit my mental health. I have to moderate how much of the news I can actually watch, and I know that's cowardly. I know that. It's cowardly, it's not the right thing. But it's sent me into such a horrible mental place. And it's distressing, it's unacceptable, it's awful, and I feel impotent. I feel a white hot fury running through me. I've kept away from commenting on social media until today, where I couldn't take it anymore, when some effing idiot said they didn't behead 40 babies, only some. That's the level. That's the level what we're dealing with. So if you extrapolate that, it means that it's okay. Because it wasn't really 40 babies they decapitated, it was just some. I can't deal with it. Just this second ago, the mayor of London, who I'm not even going to get into, I try and keep the station and women's radio station apolitical. We're not political stations, we're here for mental health and well-being. However, the mayor of London and the Metropolitan Police allow the most appalling protests and jubilations through London and crawling all over the statue of Eros in the center of Piccadilly, right? And what does the mayor of London tweet about today? They've released 5 beavers into the wild. That's what the mayor of one of the biggest metropolitan areas in the world thinks is appropriate. I don't know what to do with my anger. I don't know what to do with my despair. Let me read you something. I'll bring you on in a minute, Neil, but for reasons... This is from Carrie and David Grant. Sweetie, just wanted to let you know we're thinking of you and your family. I don't have words, as it's beyond words, but we see you, we empathize and stand with you. If there's anything we can do, please ask. Love, Carrie and David. And I teared up when I got that. A very well-known actor who I've never met, very, very well-known, privately messaged me. And one other person. Ironically, and I wasn't even going to mention this, later this month, I was flying out to Israel to take my first little break. I was only going to be there 4 or 5 days, to take my first break in 6 years. I was going to join my daughter and her family. They don't live there. They were going to go. We were going to have a few days together. I cannot put into words if anything happened to them and to those little kids. All right. But the problem is, and what's affecting my mental health, and it's not about me because I'm not Holly Willoughby, is this. I don't know how to deal with it. I genuinely don't know how to deal with it. I'm in a rage, and there's nothing I can do. And yet again, the world stands by. And the BBC refuses to use the word terrorists. Gunmen. Gunmen. Well, you know what, BBC reporters? If the gunmen come into your homes and drag your children out and shoot them, I hope you suddenly just call them gunmen, because they wouldn't be terrorists. That's for damn sure. And as for the poor sod Mark Austin, standing in Jerusalem, under attack, wearing a flak jacket, wearing a battle helmet, having to interrupt his broadcast because Holly Sodding Willoughby has decided not to go back to a daytime show that was tanking in the ratings. Unbelievable. Who gives a shit? Seriously, who cares? Her agent cares. Nobody else cares. Her bank manager cares. And to interrupt a war correspondent in the middle of the biggest massacre since 9/11 to say that somebody who makes millions from reading an auto cue as not coming back to a show that nobody wants. Jesus Christ. You know, the reason I'm not bringing you on, Neil, because if I'm going to get the flack, I'll take it myself. I don't need you to take the flack as well. It's not fair. So yeah, I'm impassioned about it. Yeah, I'm pissed off about it. I'll bring you on in 1 second. It's unbelievable. When I watched the series by the genius Charlie Booker about Black Mirror, I've watched every single one of those. I think there's been 3 series, right? It's meant to be a dystopian view of the future. It's fiction. It's not an instruction manual. And when I saw Mark Austin in full battle fatigues to protect himself, having to interrupt his broadcast because Holly Willoughby has quit, Jesus Christ, we have lost it. We have lost the plot. The media has lost the plot. Unbelievable. I'm sorry, I don't normally, let my emotions show. But I've bottled it up and bottled it up and bottled it up, and Jesus. Anywho, let's bring on, you know him, you love him, I love him, Neil Long.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, boy. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah, let's look at some of this. Would you read it out?
Just here to offer my support and agreement with what you've just said as well. I, as you know, have close friends, very close friends that are of Jewish background, and it happening to any people would be an awful. Without taking one side or another, I wouldn't want to see these. I remember me and my Jewish friend once, because we're not religious. Me a lot less than her.
I'm not religious at all, by the way. I'm not the least religious.
Spiritual, and it was one of the Jewish celebration days, and we lit a candle, pray for peace. And I said, and I remember adding to that, not just for Jewish people, for people everywhere. That's a spiritual man, that sort of thing. But that was the sentiment. And then to see these primitive, barbaric, horrific acts being
barbaric.
They
are a barbaric death cult. That's what they are. Call them what they are. They're a barbaric death cult.
Yes, they are.
That's what they are.
I agree with you.
And I want to say, let me say something else, Neil.
I'm here to support you, my friend.
Bless you. No, I hugely appreciate it. Let me say something else. I don't think that the people in Gaza, do you think I don't have sympathy? Of course I bloody well do. No one wants to see children hurt. But remember this. Please remember this. They always say it's sealed. It's not sealed. Egypt's open. There's two places. One towards Israel, one towards Egypt. Egyptians don't want them. There's 2 million people there. The surrounding Arab countries could absorb them, absolutely no problem whatsoever. They could help them, no problem whatsoever. They don't want to, because it's like a permanent open sore. I can't say much more. Anyway, Graham Pack says this. What does he say? Yeah, my thoughts and prayers are with Holly during this difficult time for her. Yes. Neil, I'll put them up. You read them out. How about that?
Hi both. It's despicable, says Chrissy Richards. Please vent for us all. I think you're speaking on behalf of a lot of people. And what I would say is it's best to get it out. It's best to get those emotions out. You don't want to bottle them up. And I think,
well, I got to tell you, we talk about mental health. You are a proponent. You are much smarter in this area than I am. You have a lot of techniques which I don't have. You've studied it. I haven't. But boy, it's hit me sideways. It's hit me sideways.
I think we have the potential for a group kind of catharsis this morning. If this turns into a kind of online encounter or therapy group, that's absolutely fine. We sometimes need to sit in collective and be with each other and give, as you say, non-judgmental or safe space for each other. And perhaps that's what we do this morning. And we have a fantastic guest coming up at 12:30, by the way, who I think.
Excellent.
And he is just everything that MRS was set up for. He's probably the most perfect guest I think I've found since in my time here.
We go back to that. Elizabeth Green from Manhattan.
Okay. She says reasonable, not the mood this morning. Yep, understood. David Baum. Sadly, your rage is natural. We can do what we've been asked to do, which is keep shouting out about Israel and what is happening. If we are loud enough, the BBC will finally realize Hamas are not protesters. What is this with Eric softly? What is this?
Why do you think? You're an intelligent guy. We've worked together for many decades. The BBC are the biggest broadcasting corporation. That's what they are.
What? I don't understand.
They won't call it as it is. They will not call it as it is.
I'm asking why.
Well, go figure. Go figure. Because it's infested with left-wing lovies who are useful fools to terrorist organizations. That's why. Yeah. Really lovely today, by the way. Black Lives Matter, a Marxist corrupt regime to which I have never subscribed. And I don't care how many dance routines you do about it. I don't give a shit, right? Okay. Came out today, Black Lives Matter UK, totally supporting Hamas. Tells you everything you need to know. Francois Pascal says this.
That really got my blood boiling. Well, yeah, but we've talked about things like that before. People jumping on bandwagons to support them, and that's presumably what's going on there. Black Lives Matter, of course they do. All lives matter. All life matters.
Yes, Francine, they do. Yes, they do. Yeah, Francine.
But this is hijacking. That's obvious to me. Francine, I think it was just a bunch of
nice emojis.
Yeah, Barry J. Allen says, Russ, I'm so sorry to hear what's going on in the world.
It's just revolting. Because there's no good. Let me just say, there's no good outcome from this. There's no good outcome from this. I'm going to simplify it. Neil Long's walking down the street. He's minding his own business, and somebody comes up and starts attacking him with a knife. Right? Neil's going to defend himself.
Well, yeah.
That doesn't mean Neil's walking around with a Glock 9 in his pocket, or a Kosh, or a knife, or a taser. He's walking down the street. He's minding his own damn business. So you would think logic would dictate Neil Long defends himself. No. If it was left to the BBC or some of these other numpties, it would be brutal Neil Long attacks poor, they twist it. They're twisting. Like the toxic duo trying to shut down media and censor what we say.
Well done, Russ, for articulating what a lot of us are feeling. I agree. Let's just be together in a collective today. Let's just be a group of people.
Well, let's try and do that. Yeah.
We're live. We're all focused on the same thing in the moment. We're in different locations, but for things like this, time, place, and such don't matter. We're here. We're now. We're with each other. Let's just be with each other and allow each other to process and to give each other the space we need for whatever we need to do. Well done, Russ, for articulating what a lot of us are feeling. A sense of despair and helplessness. To lighten the mood, I'm off to the theatre to see The White Factory, about a Holocaust survivor haunted by his wartime experiences as he tries to build a new future in 1960s Brooklyn.
Wow.
Chris Brown. You absolutely should let it all out, Russ. So please don't apologize for it. Yeah, I agree with that. It's absolutely essential that you let it out, and I would agree with that too. What's going on is beyond words, yet the world looks on and does very little. This is surely about humanity. What the F is going on? I'm embarrassed for mankind. I did hear a wonderful. I did. I,
Yes. Thank you, Chris.
I share something which may or may not, but hopefully may be helpful. I remember when the 9/11 attacks happened, and I remember seeing that on TV. And for me, because I'm a Western guy, I'm media savvy, I've seen all the movies. It looked like a surreal. It didn't feel real. It felt like I was watching a bad version of Die Hard.
It looked like a Michael Bay movie because the sky was perfectly crystal blue. It was perfect light. Everything was in 100%, HD clarity.
And at that time, I was studying. I'm going to say it, and if you want to give me flack or disagree, that's fine. I was studying quite a lot of spiritual things. I'm somewhat spiritual, shall we say?
Yes, you are.
And the question was asked of the channel, if you're familiar with that term, or if you're not, let's just use the term leader, the wise leader, how we should respond to this. And the wisdom that came back was, you will not improve the situation by watching it over and over again on TV. You will not improve the situation by constantly ruminating on it. And it comes back to the core message, what the wise person said. It was along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing here, world peace is a personal thing. Perhaps it's a good time to shine our light even and bring more love into the world, first with ourselves, and then by default, not by default, by overflow, to the people round us, because war leads to war, peace leads to peace, and to try and have a war for peace is a bit like trying to screw for virginity.
Yes,
and I'm not being distasteful. So again, it comes back to ourselves, in the sense, so rather than despairing for mankind, be the most wonderful version, the most empowered version of you today, because that will, like candles light each other, that will spread to other people, and that is how to spread peace. If everyone did it for themselves and was, shall we say, healed, then these kind of situations would be impossible. And when the world does reach a tipping point of majority being healed, we will see less and less of it until it becomes a relic of the past where it belongs. I think that's what I wanted to say.
Yes, bless you for that.
Is that help?
It does. It does help. Francine says this. My husband was there, Michael. It's the first tower came down, so you can imagine what I felt as others as well. Yeah, because she didn't know where Michael. Didn't know where Michael was.
And in saying all of those things, Francine, I do not discount or deny the horror, the awful emotions that it calls up in us, the fears, and all the very human things that we feel. But it is allowed to be a human being. We are allowed to have those feelings, but we can also know we can allow those feelings to pass through us, and do what I said in the first part of this, and focus on what we want to experience. So if we want more peace in the world, focus on peace, be what you want to experience.
I'm going to share something that I don't think I've ever discussed publicly before, but I'm going to do it. On the breakfast show, obviously we were dealing with 9/11 and the horror of it. And Chris Tarrant, whose birthday was yesterday, happy birthday, CT.
Happy birthday.
We exchanged messages yesterday. It was lovely and silly as ever. And Chris said, wasn't it terrible? I mean, you've just watched 3,000 people die.
Yeah, that's pretty horrific.
In like the biggest thing since Pearl Harbor for America. And Chris made a comment, obviously, as any right-minded human being would. And our phone lines went crazy. And our producer, the great Annie O'Neill, brilliant radio producer.
Yeah, she is.
And the phone lines went nuts. The majority, nearly all of them, was hooray. Hooray. We were in shock. Hooray, the Twin Towers came down. Hooray, all those Americans have been killed. We didn't know what to do with it.
Say that again.
That, my friends, is a little snapshot of the United Kingdom.
So we were celebrating.
Forget it. They were loved it. They thought it was great. They thought it was great.
God.
Yeah, they thought it was great because Chris commented, I remember clearly now, Chris commented that he was sickened and couldn't understand the jubilation because the news was full of people dancing and hooray, hooray, hooray. And the majority of calls to Capital Radio was good for them. I had no words. Chris had no words. We didn't know what to say. We were absolutely
I didn't know
dumbfounded.
that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I've never forgotten that. Never forgotten that morning. Let's see what Sharon says. We're both going to disappear. But Neil, would you be so kind?
Hello, Sharon McGovern. Nice to see you.
Fabulous person, by the way.
Yesterday, and she arrived on Thursday to give her sister a break after bedridden mum, who has dementia. She's terrified and was whispering as she's so fearful of neighbours. I am so afraid that she can't leave her mum, and we are all human and need to care for each other. Black Lives Matter should not be taking sides. It's all about protecting each other. Peace, not war, is what brings solutions. I'm praying daily for everyone.
Bless you. Bless you, Sharon. An amazing woman, by the way. Been a big guide to me in recent years. Big guide.
No, and this is the very beautiful side of human beings are odd, aren't they? We've got this wonderful light side, the soft, which we're displaying, I would hope, and then there's the dark side of us, and I heard another lovely quote as well: "Be a light unto the darkness and curse it not." That sounds very religious, and I'm not a religious man, but again, it comes back to shining as best you can your own light, finding your own joy. And my God, if you can find joy in a time like this, then you're pretty connected. But
I can't. It's so difficult.
Here's the thing. If connected to the source of joy, whatever we believe that to be, you are 1,000 times more powerful than millions who are disconnected. And that's where the power source comes from, I believe, for what it's worth.
I sometimes lost for words. I binge watched all of the. I'm going to change the subject because otherwise I think I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. I binge watched. I just want to talk about it very briefly. David, thank you for that comment. You can read David's comment. It's an excellent comment. A book called After and Tevika by Alexandra Silber. Very interesting. Now, I binge watched the Steve Coogan thing on the BBC, spot the irony, about Jimmy Savile. I watched all 4 episodes. I watched 2 one night and 2 the next.
Your thoughts?
Coogan is extraordinary.
Yes.
Number one. What it does I know a lot of people, and they said this when David Tennant brilliantly played Dennis Nielsen. They said, why would you watch about these monsters? We know that Savile was a disgusting, despicable piece of crap, a vile paedophile who should have been locked up years and years and years ago. And everybody said, oh, everybody knew. What this 4-part series, I think, through its brilliant writing and its excellent acting,
is
absolutely. How, when you are a narcissistic psychopath, as Savile clearly was, a sociopath with no moral compass whatsoever, and you are very, very clever, and you are a brilliant manipulator, you could see how he played all of these people for 40, 50 years.
Yep.
And it's very easy, and I'm not a fan of the BBC. I've been very vocal about it. I do think they should be defunded and they should stand on their own 2 feet. And yes, I would buy my radio license, maybe the TV license, whatever. They dice it and slice it. They still make a lot of money. But it's very clear to see he was so brilliant at his manipulation and his barefaced lies without the glimmer of a twitch on his face. You can see when they asked him, there's this the great Julian Rhind Tutt, one of my favorite actors, brilliant actor. And he's playing Johnny Stewart, who was the producer of Top of the Pops right the way through. And he asks him, there's a scene, he asks him, is there any truth? And he just looks at this guy.
I swear.
Him, really. I swear on my mother's grave. What you going to do? What you going to do?
You know what upset me? Sorry. I'm not joking.
Easy, fella.
Do you know what upset me most? And this is what I hope we now have the awareness to make sure it never happens again. What upset me most was Chris Brown talking about my comment. Yes, the smallest flame illuminates the largest of dark places. I
Beautifully
sound
put,
like,
Chris. That's nice. That's nice. I like
but
that a lot.
I do. I'll come back to him in a minute. Not him, Chris. Him. I honestly do believe, if you really look at the deeper how it was meant to be, of all the wisdom traditions, they all have the same at their core, and it always is starting with yourself, fanning the flame within yourself, and no matter how well intended, you cannot have a war for peace. You just can't do it. Can't.
What upset you the most is when you were watching the Savile thing?
I was watching the Savile thing and again, it was brilliantly acted, but when you saw those harrowing scenes of him actually doing some of the...
it was... I actually had to close my eyes at one point. I closed my eyes. I couldn't stand it.
What upset me wasn't... Of course, it was awful what he did. That was upsetting enough. But what upset me more was, you can tell, the children could tell, because it was so brilliantly portrayed, that something was terribly wrong. Their face was ashen. But nobody would believe them. There was no one they could go to. They wouldn't dare. They were too frightened. And this seems to be the case. And this is another reason how abusers get away with it, by coercion, by manipulation, by threat, and all that sort of thing. Sometimes even bribery, in my understanding. And it was just the damage that was done. I wanted to reach back through time and somehow, in the most appropriate way, as I would hug that child and say, "Sweetheart, you have done nothing wrong," because I've actually spoken to abuse survivors.
Awful.
And describe it as, it's a big, dirty, shameful secret. And my response to that, or anyone watching now that might have brought up stuff for, perhaps you are a survivor too, perhaps you're a healing journey. I don't know when this video might get seen. It is relevant whenever it does. It's 2023 now. I don't care if you see it 100 years in the future, it will still be relevant. But the fact is, yes,
it was very powerful.
There is shame. There is shame, but not yours. Shame beyond,
not yours. Not yours.
And there's a wonderful woman that's been on here, and she's very public about it, Emma Jane Taylor, so I can say her name, and she is a survivor. It's very public. It's not like a secret. And she has T-shirts saying "Not my shame," and she's really behind this. She's an incredible woman, as are any survivors. But honestly, look at the screen, look at my eyes, and hear from me. You have done nothing wrong. You never did. And there is.
And backing that up is Sharon McGovern, who's an amazing human being. And she says this: most paedophiles are so clever and such good liars and manipulators. That's why I wrote my book, Afraid, to show people how normal these monsters come across. But I'm a survivor. And I held my tongue for 40 years as the only adult I told, who was a social worker, told me not to lie. But I got him in the end. Good for you, Sharon. Good for you.
What was so well portrayed in The Reckoning, the children wouldn't have been believed. Don't tell silly lies. We can't say that to him. He's too important. No, it's not. No one, no matter how famous, is above the laws of common decency. Nobody but nobody. It's just not. Doesn't matter how famous you are. And the genuinely lovely famous people I've met, and yes, they do exist, are actually sometimes the most humble, and sometimes the most kind. And I could name them.
I'll tell you this: when I was starting out in life as an articled clerk, earning £4 a week and luncheon vouchers. Yep, £4 a week and luncheon vouchers. I'd meet up with my pal, I won't know his name, who'd just started in his advertising career, and he worked in the post room there and worked his way up to being very senior. So we were both at the bottom rungs of everything, right? And all those years ago, there were rumors about Savile. And people said, "Why don't you do anything?" Well, who's going to listen to an article clerk earning £4 a week, aged 20 nothing? Who's going to listen to a kid in the post room at a huge ad? No one.
And that's true.
The guy was always weird. Always. There was always a stink about him. Always. I'm not being clever after the event. I couldn't bear him. I couldn't
And I
stand
think
that peroxide yodeling twat is what he
many
was.
people say they always
And talentless.
Yeah, and violent as well. You look at these early life.
Very violent. Very violent.
Bit kind of gang crime going on early. You know,
he was a gangster. He was also a gangster. I had. I'll tell this very quickly, very quickly.
Is our guest in the green room yet? By the way,
yeah, the guest is there waiting. Wait me a second.
Great.
Well, I'm not going to tell the story. It doesn't matter. Let's bring on the guest. You do the introduction because I know nothing about him, but you say he's great, and I trust you.
Would love to. One of my little side hustles, and it's not a free plug, is I help people get their podcasts online, and this is one of my latest clients. I'd like to welcome him to the show. He is, and I actually wrote notes to myself because I want certain buzzword that I wanted, and spare his blushes. There's an awful lot said about what it is to be a man nowadays. You know, we've been challenged an awful lot, and this guy I think is right on the button, and in his own way he's maybe realized many things, that there's not one right way to be an authentic man, but this man's compassion, openness and authenticity absolutely shines through. We've never met in person. I have a good working relationship with him online. His podcast is called Men on Show. We're actually doing the launch party this afternoon. If you fancy a little bit of online fun, I'm going to invite you, if I may, Russ. Let's bring him on. Andrew Payne, welcome to Men's Radio.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi, it's great to be here. Nice to meet you both. Well, I've obviously know you, Neil. But it's great to be here.
I like the fact that today, Andrew, to celebrate your arrival, Neil is in portrait, not landscape, and I think I like that. It's a note of difference. Okay, so Neil, I'm going to hand. That's even better. Yeah, there you go, boy. There we are. We can see you in all your glory. Right, Neil, I'm going to hand over to you, fella, because I'm in the dark. And
sorry about the technical shenanigans. My computer's something weird, so I'm on my phone.
It's an excellent picture, and we can hear you beautifully, so don't worry. Perfect.
First of all, Andrew, tell us your website, because Russ has got the controls today. I haven't. We can pop it on the screen. What is your website where people can find you? Let's start there.
Oh, bless you. Yeah. So it's my name. It's www.Andrew Payne. Now, Payne is spelt Pain. There's no E on the end, which actually is an unfortunate surname when you consider my initial is A. You'd have thought my parents would have thought about that, but they didn't.
Well, lucky it's not hyphenated to in the arse. But anyway, there we are. .co.uk.
Yeah. I really like your podcast. I really remember
should bring up the website, unless the website's crashed and gone horribly wrong.
No, that's it. I just wanted obviously people to know where to find you, because you've got some great work. Now, editing your podcast, obviously get to listen to all your guests, and I've asked, and I'm quite blessed to edit people like you podcasts, because you are kind of the best kind of influencer, in my opinion. Because, as I said before I brought you on, there's compassion, there's openness and authenticity. And I think they are genuine male qualities. And I was watching another guy on a podcast, a young guy, and it's a podcast, this particular one is about sex. And he's teaching his sexual journey and growth and maturity. And you can see the authenticity in him. You can see it. You can see it in people. I see it in you. Why did you want to do this podcast? First of all, if you want to give us a bit of your backstory, that's fine, but tell us about the podcast and why you wanted to do it. Why does the world need to hear this at the moment, Andrew?
Well, no, let's skip the backstory. Let's just go straight into why I want to do the podcast, and maybe the backstory comes out a little bit in that anyway. But I have 3 boys. Eldest is 11. And like many parents, you think about the Andrew Tate influence and how much influence he has. And I watch his interviews, and obviously, as well as the misogynistic comments, his misuse of history when you fact check. And you think, how is he so popular? Well, he fills a gap. And we know there's a lot of I'm trying to think the best word. There's a lot of not hysteria, that's probably the wrong word to use, but we hear the words toxic masculinity all the time within the media. There are groups of people going into schools right now in London to tackle the scourge of toxic masculinity. And I can't help wondering whether actually we are driving more of our young men into Andrew Tate's narrative and hands. I see myself as a liberal, and I despair at the fact that from the left, we haven't really got to grips with actually what is driving the male crisis, that much of our language is not helpful. We know that 3/4 of people that die by suicide are men. We know that 85% of homeless people in the UK are men. So my passion with the podcast is to celebrate the stories of guys doing amazing things.
So that
but you wouldn't deny, sorry, but you wouldn't deny that Andrew Tate is poisonous.
Oh, absolutely, he absolutely is. And the second,
because it wasn't clear from what you were saying, you sounded like a bit of an apologist for him, and
not at all.
Andrew Tate is ghastly.
Not at all.
And what he teaches is ghastly.
The second point I would make about the podcast is I'm keen to counter that Andrew Tate narrative. I think he fills a gap, and I think he jumps into this space, and people think that he speaks for them. But aside from his misogynistic comments and the fact that he misquotes history left, right, and center, so I want to put sensible, balanced voices into this space that celebrate masculinity, but which also can talk very sensibly and rationally about masculinity, why men and boys are struggling, and to have those candid conversations. Because I think we need to fill that space with more of that noise, so that the Andrew Tate narrative is muted more than perhaps it is
like
today.
that. Like that, kind of almost drown it out with the positive, if you like. I mean, well, I remember when I was growing up, it seemed to be so binary when I was growing up. You could either be a bad boy or you could be a good boy, if you know what I mean. And the bad boys, they all made the films about them, all those films in the 80s, and how bad boys were, revered and all that sort of thing, and how cool they were and all that sort of thing. Or you could be the prissy good boy, the mummy's boy, and I don't want to offend anyone here, but kind of this is what I saw growing up, kind of boring church going type that really never has any fun and sits in and reads the Bible and is really quite square, but actual healthy, being an authentic guy, and whatever that meant, there was very, very little of it. Very, very little. And there was certainly not many teachings like this there weren't. I didn't come across anything really like this.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think
it goes back even further, though. If you think about it, Marlon Brando, with all those films like the Wild Ones, etc., he's the cool guy. So it goes back to the 50s and even before that as well. You're quite right.
Yeah.
And there are many sort of gendered stereotypes that aren't helpful today. It's a wonderful thing that we've seen the emancipation of women in many respects. We know that the number of women of working age that are today employed is up at 72%. It was 52% back in the 1970s in the UK. That's a great thing. But we also know, I don't know if you've read Richard Reeves of Men and Boys, that when research has been carried out among heterosexual females, they still expect provider to be sort of a key criteria as they think about, well, what would I look for in a new partner? And it could be argued that for certain sectors of men, it's hard to be the provider. It's harder than ever. And so for me, let's not shy away from these conversations. Let's have them respectfully. Let's be clear that men and women can be allies for each other. We should absolutely, there should be the uproar over what Lawrence Fox said about Ava Evans, the journalist, and rightly so. We should not stand for that at all. But there should be uproar also about what Ava Evans says about men. Some incredibly sexist stuff that the media don't talk about.
Not a nice person. I'm going to add my tuppence because I haven't actually spoken publicly about this. I've met Lawrence Fox. If you meet him personally, he's charming and utterly nice. Was it what he said acceptable? No, absolutely not acceptable. He crossed the line. It was a stupid thing to do for a man who's so intelligent. She is not a good actor. Let's put it that way, as they say in America. So yeah, I agree, but he shouldn't have said it.
Shouldn't have said it, absolutely. But I think this is where men and women can come together. We should be calling out as men what Lawrence Fox has said. And I urge women to call out Ava Evans and the things that she says that are appalling. In the some of her discussion around whether we should have a minister for men, arguing that the only reason we've come up with that as an idea is to antagonize women, to make an enemy out of them. When broached on, well, yeah, but loads more men died of COVID than women, so it'd be a good idea to have a minister for men. She says, yeah, but who did all the work during COVID? Who took on all the extra housework and parenting during COVID? Which, as a hands-on dad and many other hands-on dads, I find quite offensive. And when the suicide crisis was mentioned, she said, yeah, but men are just better at suicide than women. I mean, come on, we need to call this stuff
there
out.
is let me explain what she meant by that, although I've never met her, neither do I wish to. And because obviously I started Men's Radio Station with Howard Jameson and Penny Horner because I saw the suicide statistics. What that comment means, and let's be clear, is that women, when they attempt to end their own lives, often do it in a way that will not prove fatal. Men, being more dramatic and more testosterone driven, when you jump in front of an express train or leap off a building or a bridge, you're going to die, or you're going to die. That's what that means. So it is because the suicide attempts by men are, to use the most ridiculous phrase, more successful than those of women. Those are statistics. That's not my view. They're just statistics.
What is so much. Tell us about some of your guests, because you've got a real variety. And this is one other thing that was brought home to me by working with you, Andrew, was there is no one right way. You're totally unique. We're all totally unique. The other chap that I was watching about the other podcast, I said he's totally unique. Everyone's got their own selfhood about them, and there's no one exact right way. In fact, that's a big mistake people like Andrew Tate make, because he says this is the way, sign up to this, and everything else is wrong. Religions do that, and anyone that does that, saying our way is the only way in anything, cannot be right. There's always a zillion possibilities in every moment, I think. So tell us about some of the diversity of your guests, please, and about some of them and some of the things they've done, perhaps.
We've got a guy with an MBE for services to nursing, set up a very successful men's network within senior nurses of Afro-Caribbean and Asian men to really sort of stand up for each other, have those campfire conversations, as he refers to them, under huge amounts of pressure and just sort of how he's dealt with some of the stigmas, and how he has sort of progressed in this. He's an amazing guy, right through to Mark Brooks, who was one of the big voices behind the campaign for the Minister for Men. Nick Fletcher obviously was a Tory MP fronting that, but Mark Brooks was very involved with that. He's one of the lead voices in terms of male domestic abuse. So quite interesting range of insights on some of these male issues. We have Azim Khamiza, whose son was tragically murdered in a senseless gangland killing, where as part of the initiation rites they were having to prove themselves as young gang members. But this Azim Khamiza forgave the killer, mentored the killer, and set up anti-gang projects with the family of the man who murdered his son. Incredible story of
He said the most incredible thing, two incredible things. He said, I realized there was victims on both sides of the gun.
Yeah.
And we do talk about forgiveness an awful lot on the show, because I do believe that is a part of mental health when used properly. And Azim absolutely encapsulates this. Forgiveness is not about saying what the person did was all right or acceptable. No, it's about letting go, if you can, of your own pain associated with the event so you can be free again. And from that, the wonderful things came, because he was able to do that. He's now able to, the phrase I think is turn the healing corner, and then put out an incredible body of work into the world, as many people are. And he also said, there's another lesson here, don't leave yourself out of the people that you love. He said, I had a wonderful life before that happened, and he said, I wanted it back. It's going to be different, but I wanted my life back as well. And that's something else that forgiveness, or letting go of the pain that they caused you, will give you. It's not something you do for the other person, it's something you do for yourself. It really is. I know it may be hard to hear.
Yeah. All the way from America.
Yeah, no, he
all the way from America. Hi,
amazing guy.
Yeah, I've edited one of his podcasts before on another one of my clients, Madeline Black, the Unbroken podcast. Nigel Vardy, he was a pretty good one as well, wasn't he? Dr. Alex Blower, want to talk about them a little bit? Oh.
Yeah, they weren't in the first 5. I'm thinking of the initial 5 that get launched today.
The
There
initial
was
5.
Steve Phillip, who's one of the. We have Steve Phillip,
Yeah.
who was he's one of the lead voices in terms of suicide awareness, suicide training. He tragically lost his son to suicide. So some conversation around that. And men, and you know, again, we talked about the comment from Ava Evans. It's not, I suppose, technically whether men are more successful because of testosterone, but the way that she phrased that comment in the way that she said it, I think to someone like Steve Phillip and other parents that have lost their boys to suicide is frankly deeply offensive. There are ways of communicating that truth.
But there are
so just
certain
coming back
people.
on that Ava Evans comment.
Yeah. No,
there's certain. Not condoning it. Let's be very clear, but there are certain people who make their living on radio and on television, particularly on television, on the news channels, by just talking garbage. They know they're talking garbage, and they keep getting invited because the producers are lazy and they have them on speed dial, and it's clickbait. It's clickbait.
Yeah.
The fact that we're even talking about this nobody now, instead of listening to your valuable words of wisdom, and Neil, you know, is like, I don't want this person on the show. I mean you, I mean her. It's like,
well, let's move on.
It's a waste of our bandwidth.
Right. Let's move on. So we talked about Steve Phillip, and then there's also Keith Fraser, who very high up in the police, done a lot of anti sort of gang work. And so we've got, as Neil says, Nigel Vardy, who lost an adventurer and an explorer. I've got a few adventurers and explorers who sort of lost limbs and been in a really tough place, but have sort of come back and sort of soldier on, and it hasn't stopped them. They're adventuring. It hasn't made them think, do you know what? That adventuring, climbing Kilimanjaro, you know, I've got frostbite, and I think I stay at home and just watch Coronation Street from now on. They've just carried on.
Can I just read the beginning of the show notes from the Nigel Vardy episode? Frostbite in Alaska, appendicitis in Greenland, near drowning in Borneo, rope failure in the Khumbu, reported missing in Annapurna. Where would you go? Would you go climbing with this man? But his whole ethos is go out and get a life. Go out and get your life. And this is the thing. It's all about your choice. What do you want? Include yourself in the circle of people you love. What do you want? The
other one, Scott Johnson. I just will say this quickly because his is a story that's much more ordinary. No one was murdered. No one died. No one lost limbs. He wasn't an adventurer. He had some mental health challenges, so he decided to go for a walk, and also invite some other people to go for that walk as well, just in case anyone else was struggling. And now he has walking groups all over London. It's become a massive men's mental health movement just from that one simple action of going for a walk and inviting some random people to come along. And for me, the inspirational thing about that is it shows any of us could take an action that will really help people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's because another reason I wanted you, there's some principles that I teach, talk about quite a lot on this show, and hearing people be proponents of them, possibly without knowing that they are, but you just have, and it's the next simple step, the next simple logical step. And if just being a bit depressed and saying I want to meet some people for a walk can now spread to a movement like this, that could potentially save lives. So just by doing something to make yourself, here we go again, feel better, you actually benefit other people, because all true benefits are mutual, and it doesn't have to be complicated as well. And I think he encapsulates that really well. I want to get him on the show. I think he's amazing. Should we do some comments?
Oh, he was brilliant. Yeah.
Well, I've been doing the comments. The comments are all fine. You know, there's some. Yeah. Well, Clark. You know, no, I've met Clark. He came over from the States. We had a cigar together and a whiskey. I suffer from depression, says Clark. He's a really nice guy. I suffer from depression and Minneapolis, Minnesota, if my memory serves me right, and think about suicide a lot. Clark, please don't. Please, you're a really good guy. Don't.
No, please don't.
Get on a plane.
exist.
Get
but
on
when
a
you're
plane and have a few drams with me at the Soho Whiskey Club.
when you're in the mire of depression, because I have visited that land a couple of times, you cannot see a way out, and that's when suicide would sometimes, to the depressed mind, seem to be an option. But it's a permanent solution to temporary problems, and they are temporary. And I've heard stories of again, another wise guru type telling someone just to pick up their guitar, and just by getting into the guitar and focusing on that and feeling the creative energy start to flow through them, that cured his depression. It can be a lot easier than you may think. So never ever stop thinking there is a solution. That is not a viable solution.
There's always a solution. And you're not alone.
Elizabeth,
well, we can't let these come. You know, this is the thing. We started the station all those years ago, based just purely on suicide prevention, to be perfectly honest, and mental health. And we can't, even with our excellent guest, let these comments pass. It would be an absolute dereliction of duty. So
sometimes
Elizabeth's coming in. She's in New York, by the way. Sometimes in a black place. I've noticed it's physical, not just mental. Yeah. Neil's right. So yes, exercise is great. When my blood sugar plummets, I go black. Pay attention.
Oh, me too. Me too. I get depressed and feel like life isn't worth living if my blood sugar goes out. So there are physical components too. Yeah. Andrew, what do you do? What is your work in the world now?
So I am a speaker. I talk about men's mental health. Do a lot of training around men's mental health. I do a lot of work in schools on domestic violence, because that's some of my story from a former marriage. That really, aside from my parenting duties and the podcasts, keep me very, very busy. So I generally travel across the UK. And like I say, very varied corporates, councils, NHS trusts, schools, colleges, universities, and it keeps me very busy. And just coming back on the, we were talking about sort of feeling low and depressed. Just as a really side thing for that, I was feeling really low at the beginning of this year, although everything in my life was going really well. I went to the doctor and I had chronically low levels of vitamin D. And since getting those vitamin D levels back up, I actually feel an awful lot better. So I do think as men, we should talk about it. Of course we should. We should seek help. There's always somebody who cares, always. And also take yourself to the doctor, because you just never know physically what's going on.
Andrew, I just want to say a couple of things. Number one, vitamin D, very important. It sounds so simple, because you're sitting there in despair all over the world. You think, oh, Jesus. No, it's little things, little steps. Vitamin D. Andrew's absolutely right. Really important. Number two,
it could be nutritional, a creative block.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Like I picked up his guitar. It could be.
Pick up my drumsticks. Pick up my drumsticks.
Yeah, there's a million ways to get depressed and a million ways to get out.
And I want to recommend this, and I don't know what Andrew thinks about this. I kept hearing for years, and I talked about it with Neil on the show, about getting a SAD lamp, SAD. And I thought, sod it for 30 quid. It's a few cups of coffee in a week, and I'll get a SAD lamp. I have it on my desk. I've got it on now. Wow. I've got to tell you. And I am the world's leading cynic, Andrew. We've never met. You don't know. I don't know anything about you. You don't know anything about me. But I thought, well, look, for 30 quid, if it's a piece of shit, so what? It's 30 quid, all right? I'll bounce through and not have coffee and a sandwich one day, right? It's great. It's great. On my desk, I'm a big fan.
And the thing is, Clark, just by having conversations, open conversations like this, you might have even found an answer or a step to it on this show. This show might have been what you needed to hear right now, and then the next thing will be the next thing you need to hear right now on your journey back to feeling good again. You know,
Andrew, can I ask you a very bless you. Andrew, can I ask you a leading? I want to ask you a leading question, Andrew. Tell me to piss off if you don't want to answer it, because it's not the BBC. It's a conversation. You let something slide, and you said you go to schools, and you talk about domestic violence, and then you kind of said sotto voce because of a previous marriage. Would it be very intrusive to say that you were at the receiving end of that domestic violence? Have I completely misinterpreted?
No, that's right. I was. So yeah, for 10 years. So, and I
bless you for sharing that. Bless you for sharing that, because every time the phrase domestic violence is always, and it is the vast majority, let's be quite clear, And there's never an excuse. Ever, ever, ever an excuse.
Well, I would just add to that. Yeah, I would add it's the majority. I wouldn't even say, so we know from the statistics, it's 2.6 million reported cases in the UK every year, roughly 1.4, 1.5 million women, 700,000 men. It's roughly a two-thirds to one-third, which actually, like, it is the majority of victims are women, but not the overwhelming majority, which is often the phrase that is used in media circles.
That's interesting, isn't it? And I would imagine, and that happened to me, but I would imagine if it did, I would have felt bad about myself as the guy that society has taught me I'm supposed to be, that I couldn't deal with something like that. I would have felt shame around that, about myself and my lack of manliness. That's what I would have felt in that situation, putting myself in that situation. And of course, any bad thoughts or things about yourself are not useful. Thank you for being so open and sharing that.
Thank you.
No, you are. Well, I mean, I do talk about it.
Andrew, I want to add one thing because it's really important. There are often times I had doubts whether we have any purpose on the Daily Show and Men's Radio Station. I'll be honest. I love doing it. Neil loves doing it. Phil loves doing it. Chantel loves doing it. Jonathan Baz, we all love doing it. And it's my baby. But when I see a comment like this, coming in from America, a man I've only met once in passing, I've never told this to anyone else. If we have managed to create an environment where somebody, a virtual stranger, feels comfortable enough and open enough to share something as deep as that, my faith is restored.
And you're welcome.
My faith is restored.
And you're welcome here. And Clark, if you do go over and have a cheeky whiskey with Russ, give me a shout as well, and I'll have a cheeky beer with you as well. Can I just say what we're doing this afternoon? We are launching Andrew's podcast. May I be really cheeky and ask you to put the link to the launch up on the screen? And can I invite everyone to the launch?
Of course you can, fella.
It's an online party. It's www.
Hang on, slow. No one said I was clever. www. Yeah. Dot.
Mixcloud. As it
Say it again. Mixcloud. Mix what?
Mixcloud.
All right, got it. Yeah.
.com.
Yeah.
/live. /longy, as I spell it here. If you could be so good as to put that on the screen. We're going to be playing excerpts from his podcast. We're going to be playing some tunes, and we're going to be launching a fantastic podcast. And it is a fantastic podcast out into the world. Andrew, tell us your vision. Tell us your vision for the world, for men, world everywhere. What's your big vision, my friend? Because I'd say you're well on the way to it.
Let me tell you your vision, and then unfortunately, I've got to jump off to a call coming in at 1. So my vision for generally, I'd love to be part of a generation that, why should we not aim for a zero suicide society, or at least so substantially reduced that we can say that as a generation, yes, we made progress on this thing. I want to create a community of psychological safety, where as people, we just feel free to talk about things, be transparent and open, guys, women together. I want a society where men and women are each other's allies. There is gender unity, where some of the voices of these prominent influencers and dividers gets drowned out. That's what I want.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ruin your day now, Andrew. I'm going to ruin your day. I'm going to invite you to be my guest on a separate podcast called Walk the Talk, The Hero's Journey, because Mark Collin and I would love to talk to you. I'm going to get your details from Neil Long, and I'm going to drag you kicking and screaming onto a recording.
Andrew, thank you for being on. Good luck with everything.
You.
Let's have some fun this afternoon with your podcast launch. And when I introduced you at the beginning, and I had 3 buzzwords: compassion, openness, and authenticity. And that is certainly a massive key part of what makes to me a genuine man. And I see that absolutely shining out of you, my friend. So thank you so much.
He's got to go. He's got to go.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here. Thanks, fellas.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
And a quick word for Clark.
What a hell of a show. What a show.
Can I have a quick word for Clark as well?
Go.
Thank you for, as I said at the beginning of this show, if it's a space just where we need to be together, maybe by doing that and being safe to express our emotions about things going on in the world and how we feel, maybe we did create that opening which someone needed just to take that step forward, in public too, a brave step to
What a
actually
man.
be vulnerable
He's
enough to
such a
say,
lovely guy. And you know what? He's such a
they
lovely
always
guy.
are.
Andy.
They always
Such
are.
a lovely. We
They
met.
always are.
We
And there's been
met
lovely
on
messages of
Facebook.
support.
We met. He said, "I'm in London." I said, "Come on, let's go and have a drink." Just a charming guy.
And there's many
There
messages of love coming in. I think Sharon put one up as well, saying you
Yeah,
are loved and
totally
supported.
so.
And that's so, Clark, hard to
Totally
hear
so.
when you're in the forest, when you can't see the wood for the trees in that pit of depression. But I
Let's
promise you,
end with this.
there
I
is a way
needed
out.
this today.
If you want to be
Thank
Facebook friends with me, hit me up on Facebook, Clark,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we can have a private chat or something like that. And you are loved and supported. Your support network is
Damn
bigger
right.
than you give credit for.
Damn straight. Damn straight. Everybody, thank you for letting me rant. Excellent guest, Neil. Love the guy. Love you. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. That's all we can ask for. Bye-bye.
All right, love back at you.